I can't believe it sometimes. Returning memories, moving backwards in time. He sits there in that classroom, every single action of his more profound, punctuated by the knowledge that she could see him too, sitting there 4 benches behind him. The row on the left, it wasn't even as if he was behaving differently. I could see. He lifted the pen up and twirled it between his fingers, his sneakers that wore his leg, the leg that folded itself up at his knee that lifted up over his other leg. But he noticed it. He noticed how he behaved, and he saw how he might appear to her. He did not change it. He refused to, with absolute vehemence, be anyone else. He would be who he saw himself to be. But he noticed that she could see. Whether she actually saw him was another sentence, but he knew that she could, and that meant something. That she could see him, that someone could see him. I didn't know I thought as much. I just thought about this sitting there. A few days later, cigarette smoke littered his fingers as words tumbled out of him in jumbled gasps. He would tell her he had thought it was sudden that his words had found their way to him. It was not wrong of him to say that because it was true. It had crept upon him. Clarity had crept upon him silently. He thought he could love too many. You thought you could love too many. He hadn't told her yet. There were no words yet. There was poetry on a notes app. There were no words yet. Love happens without the words. Abandon the words, don't say it. See colors, don't say them out loud. Don't make them real. Don't say love. This was a poem on his notes app, but this was not the poem he would read out to her. There were no words yet. There were a lot of letters arranged as words, arranged as sentences on his notes app, but they had not been said out loud, so no, there were no words yet. It had taken him far lesser than he would have thought to think that he might love someone again, to think that I might love someone again, to think that you might love. Plunimophila kingdom plante, Wikipedia reads, baby blue eyes, family, something I can't pronounce, a flower, a beautiful fucking flower, climbing over a garden, creeping into an Nemophila garden. There were stories of flower gardens that made you forget that time was linear. Time is not necessarily linear, but we think of it to be so, and so it is. Linear. It doesn't have to be. Cornfield Chase, Hans Zimmer, Interstellar, Black Holes. He would tell her that he had not known that he saw her as someone to love until he would sit down to write her a poem. But maybe if he had noticed that he noticed how he cracked his knuckles in front of her, and she glanced down at his hand when he did, and he noticed that she did, and that when she glanced down at his hand, her hair fell over her eyes and she pulled them back behind her ears, and she noticed that he noticed her do that, and she knew that she was being seen just as he knew that he was being seen, even though she thought it was only because he saw her first that she saw him too, just as he saw her only because he thought she saw him first. They might have known that they could love each other before he wrote that poem for her. His words flowed out of him as would a river that turned into a waterfall. The words flowed as a river. The waterfall would come after. They would lie naked in the flower field. There would be a waterfall in that silence. I would find water falling down on me, suspended in time. I would find myself drowning, and I would not have it any other way. They returned through the gate. Before they would return, they would leave. They would go to the store outside the building and share a cigarette. It wasn't just the two of them. There were more people, and she would call, and that was why he would go. And they would return walking through that gate. The cold night, the night before, he sat with his words flowing out of him as would a river writing his poem. He would run to her and let her know that the poem told him something about himself that he had not known before, and he really could not send it to her unless she sat and read it with him. He fell asleep that night thinking of what his heart had just told him. I did not live my life in comparisons anymore. I could not live in the knowledge that someone could be someone else, that the gaping holes left by people could be filled by other people. Gaping holes left by people shall always be gaping holes, but our lives are large enough to create infinite spaces for people to come stay. An older memory comes back to me. I remember running into her arms as her parents stood in front of her, and I did not care that they did. I ran into her arms anyway. She would leave my heart a few months later. She would walk away and she would leave a hole there. A hole that fucking creeps into every work of art I make, like this one. She wasn't in this story, but look, she has not left. Look at her. Invasionary. She's always here. She will never leave. Every love story of mine will find her, climbing in, creeping in. Eternal fucking muse. It is not that holes never go away. They are filled with the people that leave, that stay there. Everything you have known of them stays there. It's almost oxymoronical if you think about it. Ocean Wong writes, "You once told me that memory is a choice, but if you were God, you'd know it's a flood." Memories occupy spaces that feel like holes. She left. She broke him after having pieced him up, and he did not know he could love again, but when he wrote this poem for another, he realized that he could. He had lost everything because she left. It still baffled him that she could leave, that she had left. He had pieced himself up again. He had done it himself, and he could not leave himself, so he would never be broken again. This new poem, many months after she had gone, was proof that he could love again. It did not matter to him if she said yes, but it did matter to him that he tell her. He would not refuse to speak. He would say. He would enter into people's lives like a storm, and he would be blinding light. He would take their hopes and forge them into new ones. He would wreck their plans. He would be so much love. He sat there with his poetry as a heart. He sat there with his heart under the tree. His words flowed out of him as he performed his poem. Rustling leaves, the whispering wind. She sat in front of him listening, eyes widening with every word. She would later say she had won. Universe zero. That this had happened to you. That this had happened to me. Maybe that was enough. That he had been light in someone's life. It did not matter that she had said yes. He could not believe it sometimes. How do you fuck up a friendship? Telling someone you want to love them and then they say yes. But maybe it is not doomed, because it is only when you think of something to be something that it isn't that it becomes the something that you dread. He did not care anymore for what he thought. He would be. I would be. You would be. She would be. We would be. They could not believe it sometimes that it had happened. The moon was bright enough to let the quivering flowers flutter against the naked eye. He lay under the tree and she lay against his shoulder. His yellow backpack, his pillow, and him, her pillow. There was a waterfall in their silence. "What is your love language?" he had asked her a few weeks ago. "Honestly, I don't know what it's like to be in love," she had said. It was an old conversation, inconsequential. It came back to him now. His love language was comfortable silences. There was a waterfall in their silence, and in that silence he tried to show her how to love. They say that the Nemophila field allows you to travel time, that you could jump dimensions, that the flowers were magic. Maybe all of that was bullshit. Maybe it was just incredibly fucking beautiful. Maybe when you see beautiful things, you stop to really, truly see them. And when you stop to see something, you stop frozen memories and frozen moments. Maybe that is why when things are beautiful enough to make you feel like you can travel time, those memories are worth keeping. Who cares if I fuck up the friendship? I have a memory now of being in that Nemophila garden with her at the end of this work of fiction. I've never been to the garden, but now I think I have, and when I think of it, it becomes just as real as any other thought, as any other memory that I might have had. I have a memory of the two of us in a Nemophila flower garden, and that is enough.